Awesome. So I'm introducing myself. I'm Dr. Barbara Glaeser from Cal State Fullerton, and I also was a teacher for 14 and a half years. I taught elementary, middle school, and high school. And that was such an adventure. But my real title is special educator because awesome, differentiating, behavior changing ninja would have fit on my resume. So I'm all these things. I'm a teacher of teachers now. I work in mild moderate disabilities, although for a while I had emotional disturbance, which I was talking to you about. That was a real challenge. I was a classroom teacher for 14 years, way back in the olden days when special ed was very new, and they put everybody in my class. We didn't know what autism was. I had a kid with autism. Now I know he had that, but at the time it was just, you fake it. You're a ninja. You just figure it out. Whatever they bring to the table, that's what you work with. And it's pretty much carried me through those years. It's really, whoever you get, you work with the families, and you try to find out what's going on with that child and how best to help them. I'm now a researcher and a presenter. I'll show you later a funny picture. I don't know if we have time for it, but I'll show you what I do now for presenting. I'm a mother of a child with a disability, which it happened after I became a teacher, so I thought maybe God had plans for me. And I actually studied biology. I wanted to be a scientist, and I had two interviews, a science teacher in Huntington Beach and a special ed teacher in Chino, and the special ed called me first. And the other guy in Huntington Beach said, well, we were supposed to call you. We tried to get you. And I said, no, I already accepted, sorry. And that's kind of where I went. And you just never know where you're going to be led. And I'm a daughter, and I take care of my mom now. She has dementia, and being a special ed teacher has really helped me a lot because her characteristics of losing her memory and not knowing steps and things like that is very much like special ed. I have to do visual schedules and even a visual timeline so she understands her life, kind of. She's forgotten all that stuff, so that helped me quite a bit. So special ed's just really multi-talented. I'm a reader and a gardener. I like to grow tomatoes especially. And make a lot of tomato-based foods for sure, spaghetti and stuff. So what is special education? Well, the Individuals with Disabilities Act defines special education as specially designed instruction at no cost to the parents to meet the unique needs of a child. And I did another presentation this weekend at San Diego Canyon College about the fact that it took a long time to get this law passed, and mostly it was parents that pushed it, because kids with special needs were shut away and locked away in houses, hospitals, anybody who was different. Actually, yesterday I visited the Museum of Tolerance in LA. It was very horrible to realize that kids with disabilities were also part of the groups of people who were just thought of, well, we don't need them, so let's just get rid of them. So now in America, kids have a right to an education, a free education. So more specifically, special ed is academic, physical, cognitive, and social emotional instruction. And just what you were saying about the whole child, and you have to know everything about the child. Where were you at?
I should know this because but I can't. What year was IDEA?
I think 1975.
Okay.
I believe it's 75. So the current average salary, if you're interested in becoming a teacher, is $59,000. That's average. So different districts start at different levels. Some start at 40 to 45, which is a pretty good salary, and you can move up from there. I can say that now I'm nearing retirement age. I found out that teaching has a great retirement system. It's awesome. The union is really good, so there's a lot of benefits. And of course, people say we only work 9 months a year. Don't buy that baloney. It is so not true. You work all year. And I even found that it took me a month just to relax because you're so on. They say that we're the only profession that gets 30 clients at once. And in special ed, we have a few less, but still, those are more involved kids, so it takes more out of you. And a doctor gets how many at once, right? How many does a doctor see at once? One, right? And they can totally focus on that one child or one adult, whatever. And you don't get that in special ed or education. So we're on a lot, the whole time we're at school from 7 in the morning all the way through 4, however long it takes you to get your lesson plan's done, 6 o'clock. It's a hard job, but it's very rewarding, but you do get that time for kind of relaxing and relief and get those vacations. So it's good. It's a good balance. So your responsibilities are many. You'll be doing planning for instruction, doing the instruction, tracking student progress. That's really critical, most important. Making sure that kids are moving forward, and if they're not, finding out why they're not, and finding some other thing that you can do with them. making sure that you're doing the individualized education programs. And are any of you familiar with special ed? Have you ever had a brother or sister? Okay, who did you have in your family?
No, I haven't been around family, but I helped out in high school.
Okay, so you know that those IEPs are contracts and the teacher must follow them. It's not just something we write and say, oh, I'll put it in the closet, put it in the drawer. What is your experience?
Myself, I have Asperger's, so I am familiar with things like IEPs, and I have been in some special ed classes before.
Excellent. Okay, so you know it's a law, right? And you
Yeah.
have a right to those accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing you know that some people don't know at this level is that you have to ask for those accommodations at the community college level. And I remember when I brought my son to Fullerton College for the first time, he was surprised that I couldn't go in with him because I'd done everything with him all up to that time. And I said, no, hon, unless you give me permission, I can't go in there because you're an adult now. He's like, no, you have to come with me. But it was a little process to get him to start taking more of the advocacy steps and moving forward. It sounds like you've already figured that out, but he told me he's still working on it. It's still hard to know what to ask for and who to ask that of, right, sometimes. And you have to tell your professors, right? You have to let them know in advance.
I mean, it's easy for me because I'm trying to wean myself off of those special accommodations.
That's good, that's good. And he's gotten to that point too, so that's awesome, over time. But that's something that we as special educators set up. We set up that success. Obviously you had some good teachers.
Yeah.
Sounds to me like you did, that's great. And you could be a good teacher because you could say, I've been there, I know what it's like. That's awesome. And then who else had an experience? Yeah, you did.
My son, I had one of my 6 sons, was in special education, and he basically from high school, and he was diagnosed to like high school with AED, and so I'm familiar with IEPs, and he transferred from special education to mainstream and went from a .333 grade point average to like 3.333. He just graduated as a scholar athlete.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So yeah.
So IEPs are very, very important and critical. And following those and making sure the students are making progress so that they can be these success stories. So you're responsible for that in many, many ways. Developing behavior management. So today we get a lot more interesting behaviors. During the 70s and 80s, well, I wasn't teaching them, but I started teaching in the 80s. And there was a lot more drugs in schools and things like that, and we would see drug babies born with parents who had been on drugs. And so those are interesting behaviors that we have to learn to deal with. Today, more things are being identified like ADHD. Before people would say, oh, they're just hyper. Well, now, we've identified that as something that could use some accommodations and some behavior management that would help that student succeed better. So we have to understand that behavior management. Collaborating with other professionals, that's the fun part. I think it's really fun. I get to work with nurses and behavior therapists and physical therapists, adaptive PE specialists, my speech and language teachers, and general ed teachers. All those people we get to work with to make sure we're all wrapping around the child and making success for them, creating success for them. We have paraeducators. That's another advantage of special ed. In a general ed class, you're pretty much by yourself unless you get a parent volunteer. But in special ed, we always have an assistant. It's kind of fun. You have another adult, you can say, help. And often it's critical, especially if you're working in early childhood. Is anyone interested in working with babies, little ones? Or even in elementary, generally you usually have one. If you're working with moderate severe, you might have more than one because their kids are more involved and you might need another person there to help you with the kids, maybe to use feeding tubes and things like that. So I'll talk a little bit about what those differences are in the programs. Attending meetings, of course you have to go to the IEP meetings, and attending trainings, continually improving yourself. I got, luckily, I got to hear on Friday at the San Diego College, they had a speaker who was one of the 9 students who integrated Little Rock High School in Arkansas. And I don't know if that was the name of the high school, but it was in Little Rock, Arkansas. And he was saying that you have to be a lifelong learner. You as a teacher, if you come in with that mental attitude that I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly wanting to know what I can do better, because you don't know everything when you get out of school. You have to keep learning, and more things come out, more things that we understand about kids, about disabilities, about methods that work. We have to keep that attitude always. So what does a special education teacher teach? Well, all these are all the categories of special education, and you can have any one of these kids in your class. Generally, early childhood, the babies, visual impairment and hearing impairment, they're kind of special. They're their own little categories and they're grouped together. But in a general ed classroom, you could have any of these. You could have an child with autism spectrum disorder, teaching language, an intellectual disability, some, kind of low IQ or even higher IQ, but unable to read or write. A developmental delay, traumatic brain injury, that's a real toughie. That can happen. Kids can sometimes do dumb things like ride on skateboards without helmets and get hurt, and they could have a traumatic brain injury, or go on a motorcycle, or get in a car accident, or actually when I was first learning to teach, I had to go to a special school where I remember this little girl came up to me, and I thought she looked so perfect, what's wrong with her? But then I looked in her eyes and there was nothing there. She just had nothing. I said, what happened to her? They said, oh, she drowned. So what do you think happened?
Probably lack of oxygen to her brain.
Yeah, she drowned and then they brought her back, which of course parents would want that, right? But then she had that traumatic brain injury, so she was in a special school. So that could be many different things. If a child's in a car accident or something, different parts of the brain get impaired. So that's kind of a tough thing to deal with. And again, sometimes drugs or overdoses can cause those things. Specific learning disability, by far the biggest category. You're gonna get mostly these guys. And these are the kids who struggle with reading, writing, and math, and just school. Now my son had this, and he had more Asperger's, that's what he was diagnosed with. And because he had that disorder, reading, writing, and math were not easy, but that wasn't where his disability was. His disability was in social difficulties. A little bit of writing. I have to admit, writing was tough for him, and we had to help him quite a bit along the way. But it was a lot of social skills that he needed, and still needs that area. And then emotional disabilities, kids who have just really outgoing behaviors, let's put it that way. Things that need special environments, special strict schedules, strict behavior plans to help them function. Orthopedic impairments can be kids with just fine, their minds could be fine, their bodies aren't working right. You could be on their caseload because you're supposed to be watching them in general ed and making sure they get the accommodations they need. In general, they can say, well, leave me alone, I'm fine. I'm in the wheelchair, but I can get in there and work. I can do whatever I need to do. Or you could have a child who maybe has cerebral palsy and needs a special device in the classroom, something that helps them with their hand to be able to use a mouse, or not use a mouse and use something that they can hit with their head, something like that. But they could be cognitively fine. Or at the other end of that spectrum, you could have someone who has orthopedic impairment and has cognitive abilities and needs a special classroom. So it could be that huge range. Hope I'm not scaring you. It's just so much to learn. And then visual impairment, hearing impairment, deafblind, again, those are more special. If it's a mild hearing impairment or mild visual impairment, they can sometimes be in the general ed class with those accommodations, maybe a computer screen that enlarges things for them, and you'd be in charge of helping them get that. Multiple disabilities could be all of those together, and other health impairment could be ADHD, asthma, diabetes, anything that interferes with learning. So you don't necessarily have to have, like if you have diabetes, that doesn't necessarily interfere with your learning, but it could. So it just depends on whether they're in special ed or not. So all those things. So what do you work with? And then I talked about this before, all these groups of people that you're gonna collaborate with. And what are some special skills you might need? Well, you're a disability expert. That's why I kind of went and did an overview for you, did a little describing. One of the first courses you would take in the program to become a special ed teacher is that overview of disabilities. So you get to go to different sites and watch and learn and just see what happens in that classroom and what does that disability look like. And that was one of the most valuable experiences for me. You can tell I still remember those experiences even watching gifted kids. What are gifted kids? I had this fantasy that if you had a gifted kid in your class, they're fine. You don't ever have to worry about them. Oh, I was wrong. And I actually took on a gifted class once because I thought, oh, I want a relief from special ed. I want to go to work with gifted. Oh my God, they're a pain in the neck. They are very competitive. Some of them don't want to work with others. I want to do it myself because they don't do it well enough because they're so competitive. They work very fast. If you don't have the answers, you're the dumb teacher. They're challenging. It's like, wow. And they think fast, they talk fast. It was really interesting. So watching a gifted class was very interesting too. And I could tell you, if you don't give kids something to do, they will find something to do, whether they're gifted or not. So it's constantly being on and making sure we give the kids even more. And they'll take advantage of you if you don't. They figure out you don't know what you're doing. It's pretty scary. You have to be a behavior expert. You have to know the steps of how do I intervene so that I can make it successful for this child. We have a new way of looking at it called positive behavior support. Have you ever heard that word before? It's awesome. I mean, we didn't have that when I first started. It was just, what are you going to come up with? You're going to have rewards, you're going to have points, we have points for kids, and that still works, but PBS is a new way of looking at it, and basically it says the behavior has a purpose. If a child is doing something, they're sending you a message. I got called recently to go to a school, I won't name it since I'm on camera, but the teacher asked me to come. She said, I'm just, don't know what to do. These kids are just out of control, and they indeed were. She had 2 students who would jump up in class and say, I have anxiety disorder, and just want to walk around the room and say that and be constantly bugging other kids. And to her it was like, sit down. To me it was, these kids are shouting, I need something, I need help, I need you. And so I pulled them aside and I talked to her about that. And one of them, it turned out, was transitioning from female to male. She was having a transgender issue. So that was another layer on top of that anxiety that she was having. So she just needed someone to talk to, and she needed to feel like she did have anxiety, so she did have that high energy level. So we needed to find a maybe quieter place for her, some things, or I should say him now, some things for him to do that would be more involving right away when they came into class, instead of all the chaos that was going on. So those behaviors speak to you, and then you have to analyze in what situation is it occurring, what is triggering it, what are the triggers that are causing that behavior. So in that case, it was the chaos of coming in from a break. It happened to be the class I was watching was right after lunch, so boom, it was just noisy, and that triggered that anxiety. And the other person, the same thing, other boy. Then what do I do to set it up so that doesn't happen? So then immediately they don't come into that room, they come to the side and they sit with me, or I stand with them, or we talk, or they get a chance to breathe. Whatever it took. They needed I needed to cordon off a little corner for them to just settle down. So you set up the environment, positive behavior support. We're supporting positive behaviors, not those negative ones. And by the teacher saying, sit down and be quiet, that was reinforcing that acting out behavior. And also one of them we decided to put in theater, because we said, well, maybe that outgoing part of you needs to be expressive, so that worked a little bit. So you become a behavior expert, you need to find out what is happening with each child and what we need to do. Set it up so that they can be successful. Special educators are expert in teaching methods, so that's part of the whole program, is learning what those methods are, in addition to positive behavior support. If you come to Cal State Fullerton, in addition to that first class where you learn all about the different disabilities, you'll learn about positive behavior support, you'll learn about methods, you're going to learn about introduction to teaching. Do they take a course here on introduction to teaching? So you'll have a little bit more of that. One of our emphasis is on English learners, because we have many of those in Southern California, so that's a big emphasis in one of those classes. And you learn about introduction to autism, because that's another huge population now. And I'm trying to think of the other class that's escaping me. Oh, and then characteristics. If you're choosing mild, moderate, and I haven't explained this yet, the 3 areas are mild, moderate, severe, and early childhood. So mild, moderate, like it sounds, it's kind of a huge category, but it's all those disabilities that I showed you before, but on the mild end. Kids who could start in general ed, or maybe be part-time in general ed, and your job is to kind of make sure they're successful there. And then you can still do some pull-out to do intensive reading instruction or math or writing, whatever they need. And then moderate severe is in the middle area. It's got that moderate word there because it's still kind of in the middle, and then the IEP team decides which is which. The moderate severe is a little more involved and usually has more of a special class. They're pulled out more often, and more than 50% of the day in general. So that could be your choice. That could be something you want to do. The mod severe teachers have to learn how to do tracheotomies, not tracheotomy, but the feeding tubes, and trachs. Some of them have done trachs before. Working with medical issues, working with orthopedic devices, how to put them on, how to take them off. Many different things that you'd find with kids who are more involved or more severe. Walking them to the bus and from the bus, and really work with maybe some low cognitive kids, or more severe behaviors like with autism, severe autism. Real lashing out kind of behaviors. You really have to be ready for those things. And then early childhood is birth through 5 5. It's going to be birth through kindergarten. It's going to be changing, coming up soon. But you're working with the babies, so if that's your thing, you really want to do that, that'd be fun. You know, as soon as they're born or unidentified, then they are eligible for special ed. My son was identified at around 3.5, and that's because I didn't know what was going on. I had a daughter, and she could read and talk, and everything was fine, and I had this son who, well, he didn't do that. He didn't talk, he didn't want to look at books, wasn't interested in that. I didn't understand. I thought, well, maybe my daughter's talking so much that he doesn't want to talk. I heard about that, right? Oh, it's because this, because that. You think of everything. And it's interesting to watch now how I responded to having a child with a disability as a special ed teacher. Like, I didn't know. I did everything that I think my parents did, and I didn't realize it. So I learned a lot about what parents go through. You really go through the denial stage, the stages of grief. What did I do wrong? You know, did I eat too many hamburgers when I was pregnant? What did I do wrong? Or is it genetic? Or why is he doing this? Is it something I'm not doing enough of? Then you finally give in and say, okay, there must be something wrong here. So then I took him to the local school, and he was identified as having a speech and language disorder. Well, back then they weren't identifying autism. He didn't have the flapping, the typical behaviors that people were associating with autism. So it was so mild that they said speech and language. Later, he was diagnosed with Asperger's, and that explained a lot. What they were telling me didn't explain the lack of eye contact, the lack of social skills, and the lack of speaking. Well, the speech and language part did, but it was a long haul and a long road working with the school. And so it really gave me a new perspective in what parents come in for, and that's what you said, and really get to know the families. Because if we think about wanting to have everybody assumes your children will be normal and beautiful and wonderful little creatures, and then you have somebody that doesn't fit that. What do you do now? Was it me? You know, is it them? What did I do wrong? How do I fix it? And they want the best for their child, and sometimes that sets up an adversarial situation where they feel that you're not doing enough. And so a lot of negotiation skills in there, kind of counseling skills to learn how to work with them and say, I understand you want what's best for your child. Let's work together, because my focus is again, what's best for your child. So some of the things you might be doing in a classroom are small group instruction, direct instruction. What that means is we make assumptions that all kids are learning just because I'm standing and talking to you. This kind of teaching is not what we would use in special ed, which we call it say and spray, which is just, I'm just talking at you. But real good teaching is interaction, we're interacting, and making sure that you understand. So we don't do that in special education. We direct instruct, which means we go slow, we scaffold with step by step. We make sure at each step they get it, and we get feedback from them so we know they're getting it. We do the task analysis of each task we want them to learn and break it into parts so that we know what to teach, especially like math, something like math, the little steps at a time, make sure they get it. And some kids don't learn that way. Some have to go around a different way. An environmental design such as UDL, Universal Design for Learning, is multiple ways of expression, letting kids express what they're learning in multiple ways of accessing the content, and I can't remember the third one, just blank. Multiple ways of expressing means that we give kids their own way to express it. For example, I had to teach a multi-age class, and it was 4 through 6, and they had to do a state report. So I had kids who are low cognitive, kids who have learning disabilities, kids who are gifted, and then everybody else in between. So I told the kids who were gifted, you guys get to go to the library, and here's a list of ways that you can show that you understand the states. They could do a news report, they could do a play, they could do just a standard report, whatever they wanted. And they could use the computer to do it. There was a limited number of computers at that school, so I couldn't let everybody do it. The kids in the middle, they did the standard type report. I gave them a sheet, they filled it all out, and then they started writing. And then the kids with disabilities, I said, you guys can do a mural, you can do pictures. Because one of the things I had learned as a special ed teacher is that my students with learning disabilities could talk, they could express themselves verbally really well, and visually. I would catch them writing on their notepads, and back then, we had to take away notebooks that had graffiti on them. But if you looked at some of the graffiti, it was brilliant. like, look at the artwork there. I mean, if you see some of those trains go by, you ever seen some of those trains go by with all that artwork? Some of it's pretty cool. It's like, wow, that guy should be in art school instead of drawing on trains, but maybe that's his way of expressing himself. So I learned that, and then I started looking at some of their IQ scores, and I had the experience of students at one time saying, well, we're retarded. You know, what? They said, yeah, this is the retarded room. Everybody knows it. So what? He goes, and you're the retarded teacher. I said, okay, let's have a talk. We're gonna have a talk about this. I said, first of all, you wouldn't be here if you couldn't learn. That's part of this class. You have to be able to learn. So, you know, that what you're thinking about retarded, I'm stupid. No. You just haven't been taught right. And you've had some school failure, and you have some problems learning. That's true. So they had never seen their IQ scores. Nobody showed it to them. So I said, look, there's a number in the middle that says 100 or whatever it is, but there's all these sub-scores. And I knew this because my son had this. In the sub-scores, it would say comprehension might be kind of low. That's a reading skill. But on the other side are all these visual skills like block design and sequencing of puzzles and things like that. Those would be high. And you average them, and it comes out with that average IQ, so they think, oh, I'm just average or lower, like 90. And say, look at these high ones. That's your areas of strength. And I used that to help them understand that they were not dumb. And I had that experience with my son. He learned the same thing. I don't know what's happening in schools that kids with disabilities are still coming out feeling that way, but because they know they're different. And I showed him, look at your IQs. It's that lopsided. Over here is that verbal stuff that may measure in school that you get your grades for, but over here are these brilliant areas in visual and things like that. And when he was 3 years old, I caught him playing with an editing machine. He's like, look, mommy. He's watching Star Wars frame by frame. Who watches like that? I said, what? He slowed it down and it went, the best Star Wars like this, boom. And he'd say, look, boom. And I said, okay, so I figured out this kid is thinking in terms of the little frames. Maybe editing would be a field he could do. And that's what he does. He's now an editor. Yeah, can you believe it? So one of the roles of the teacher is to look for those things. And especially with kids who are feeling that school failure, if you see them drawing, you know, instead of listening to you, let me see that artwork, it looks awesome. Let me see your designs. You know, maybe that's something you want to go into. And don't listen to the feedback that you're getting all the time. Just because you're not getting a good grade in this class doesn't mean that you can't succeed at something that's maybe visual or spatial, whatever. So you really have to look for that talent. You have to dig and find it for some kids. So on this list is not counseling, but that's in there. Video modeling, showing kids how to do things with pictures. Assistive technology, I mentioned a couple of those, like the screens that make things bigger. Peer tutoring, peer modeling, social stories. If you don't know what a social story is, it's kind of a script for kids. And for my son, he got his first internship at a place called Psychic Bunny, believe it or not. If you watch Ninjago, I can't think of it. There's an online Ninjago series. He did it, and it says made by Psychic Bunny. I have to think of the word that comes after it. But anyway, it's an online Ninjago movie, and they did it, and Psychic Bunny did it. So he went for his internship. He tells me the things that are going on. He would not tell them he had a disability. And I said, what did they say when you did that? You know, he's like, this happened, that happened. Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna tell him, I'm not gonna tell him. At the end, I had him go in and do an exit interview, and we had to do the script, the social story. Here's what you say first, here's what you say second, practice, say it out loud. And so he came home and I said, okay, what did they tell us? It was fine. That's what he always says, everything's fine. I said, okay, what did she say when you asked for the strengths? I'm good at finding mistakes. Well, yeah, he's good at looking at the frames. I'm good at fixing mistakes. I'm good at et cetera, et cetera. What's your weakness? So he told me, I don't remember what they were. And I said, what did they say when you said, should I have told you I had a disability? He said, the lady went, oh, Vince, that would have explained so much. So I'm like, see? But it's a tough thing, huh? To choose to tell an employer.
I kind of accepted it myself, so I don't have any problems divulging that information when I feel like it's important.
Good.
But I usually try to keep it to myself.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you have to kind of balance. Is it going to help, or is it not going to help for them to know this? And it's not a bad thing to get the job and then later on say, well, I just wanted to let you know this is how I approach life. It's not, I have a disability, but this is how I approach tasks. So One of the things kids with autism do is they work through a task. They don't take the social breaks like lunch. And I took him to a support group where they told him that. I said, Vince, it's illegal for you not to take lunch. But he would sit and work at his desk and eat. And I said, you know, maybe that's one of the things they're wondering about you. You don't go in the lunchroom and talk. Try that. It's a challenge for him to do that. And visual schedules, like I told you, I use with my mom, and you have to use it with students sometimes. In the morning we do this, and then at recess we do this. And then visual communication systems for kids who aren't verbal. There's a thing called PECS, picture exchange communication, for kids who can't talk, where they can come up and hand a picture to someone that says, I would like a glass of water, and then the teacher can hand back, okay, go ahead. So they learn that kind of symbolism to help them communicate. Special ed law is very important. You have to know that because you are bound by it. That IEP is a legal document. You have to hit timelines, like parents must be informed that there's a certain amount of time that there's an assessment coming up. They must be informed of the progress of their child, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a little tough, but you can do it. You don't have the 45 kids, like I said, that sometimes a regular teacher does. A high school teacher has 120, because they've got kids that come every period, right? So you have fewer, but then you have to know them intimately, and you have to know what's on those IEPs. You work well with families, as I talked before. It's sometimes a challenge, but often rewarding. And most times, parents really want what's best for their child. I did have a child once that the psychologist told me, oh, they're living in a chicken coop. I said, no, they're not. Come on. They were coming to school with their hair smashed like this, right? And they're sticking up, and hungry as heck. So I would bring granola bars for them, and it looked like they were sleeping in their car or something. You know, you can tell those kids, they don't look good. And they you know, can tell they're not washed. And she said, well, they're in a chicken coop. I said, no, they're not. I'd had experience of kids living in cars, but not in chicken coops. She said, I'm serious. So we went out there one rainy day, and out in this field where it was dirty and muddy and pools of water were chicken coops that somebody had stuck siding on, and people were living in there. That was their housing, and then it was pretty sad. So we tried to keep in touch with the family. They never came to IEPs, obviously, because they were busy working, trying to support their family. And then at another time, we had another student, and the kids, they did well with a lot of attention. Another child came into my class who parents never came to IEP, so we drove out there, and that was the address they gave. And they were in a car waiting to jump into the chicken coop when they opened up. So that would have been a step up for them. So think about that. But that family got out of the car. They were so happy that we were there. They wanted the best. They said, whatever you do for him is fine with us. We'll sign anything. They were so supportive. So you really don't know. You have to find out about the lives of your child. I had kids who lived in cars whose parents were working in hotels. So they would drive to school, drop them off, go clean a hotel, come back, pick them up. They do their homework in the car and eat in the car while they clean the second hotel. So that's life. And so if we get angry at them for not coming to meetings, well, why are they not there? They're working their patooties off trying to support those little kids. So we need to understand that as well and try to make accommodations. Sometimes it means you work a little bit later, but that's okay.